the series with the Cavs and Chicago just because of the way it's gone. Chicago leading the whole way in Game 1. Cleveland leading the whole way in Game 2. And then you have a buzzer beater in Game 3 and Game 4. It couldn't have been any more lopsided in the first two or any closer in the last
Well, you
two.
heard them all there in the open, and a nice job by Randy putting those together. But you had buzzer beaters literally shot in the air, buzzer goes off, ball goes in Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in the NBA playoffs. That's more than we've had in the last 5 NCAA tournaments combined. So it's been sensational. But none of that is the headline. None of that is the headline. And I don't like saying this the way I have to say it, but it would be inaccurate not to state it this way. David Blatt tried as hard as he could to give that game away for the Cleveland Cavaliers yesterday, and LeBron James didn't let him. There's no other way to put it. David Blatt tried to call a timeout he did not have.
Boy.
With about 7 or 8 seconds left in that game. And at whatever point that is that LeBron is bringing that ball up the floor, David Blatt is obviously the only man in the building who doesn't know he doesn't have a timeout left. They just had to use 2 of them trying to inbound a ball.
It was a timeout session, wasn't it?
It was a festival.
As they couldn't get the ball in, and it was actually after a Rose layup when he tried to call the timeout. And thank God for Tyronn Lue, the assistant coach, who pulled Blatt off the court. Blatt was on the court trying to signal a timeout. How a ref didn't see him, I have no idea, because he was on a court right down there by the refs, and Tyronn Lue pulled him off the court and saved them from giving up a technical foul, so shots and the ball.
So that obviously turns the game. And then in that final second, and we'll have to have a separate conversation for the purposes of this about the stoppage of play there to look at the monitor.
Nobody's got a timeout, but go ahead and take a little time amongst yourselves while we look at this.
Jeff Van Gundy is apoplectic on the telecast. I saw you and Jalen talking about it a little bit on Twitter as the day went on. It does actually become significant because they put time back on the clock.
Yes,
so that is meaningful.
Yes, it is.
You could solve that problem if you want to by, during that stoppage, not allowing teams to huddle. So if you're going to have a stoppage, if there are no timeouts remaining, for those of you who didn't see the end of the game, with I think it was 0.8 seconds left. LeBron goes to the basket. It's clearly foul.
But they were letting it go, so they didn't call foul, and Chicago knocks the ball out of bounds.
It's clearly off Mirotic. I mean, the people in the worst seats at the United Center know that it's Cleveland ball.
We're starting to see this more and more. The refs just want to make sure who it went off of and then make sure of the time left on the clock. So neither team had a timeout here, but both teams had the ability to go to their bench and draw up whatever they wanted while the refs were checking this out.
So, and I mean, Van Gundy was the first to say it because he's on the telecast, but everyone in America is thinking it. Here's the Cavalier team that was trying to call a timeout it didn't have, and now you've given them one. So if you want to solve that problem, not to say that well, look, I mean, if you're allowing David Blatt to call you a play, then obviously that was almost a detriment, but LeBron James is the one who made the decision. That said, you give them a stoppage. Don't let them huddle. Don't let them go over to their bench and start drawing up a play.
Now, then you're listen, you can work that out because how far you're letting them go.
Keep the players on the court.
Right, okay, you keep them on the court, but they can stand 10 feet away from the bench where they can still do whatever they want to do. I mean, I'm with you. I think it's worthy of discussion. But as I was getting into the discussion, as Greeny said with Jalen Rose, because at first I agree with it. I said, are you kidding me? You're giving him a timeout. You got to figure a way not to do it. But at the end of the day, you know what they did? They got the clock right. And you can't tell me now. It seemed LeBron would have catch this ball and would have got it off probably in 0.8. But you almost doubled the time. You went from 0.8 to 1.5 seconds.
By the way, I'm not sure he would have. When he lets that ball go, it is like 0.3 left.
So maybe not. So I guess my point is
they would have had to do something else.
They did get that right by adding the time. That was the correct thing to do if you were going to review it there. They got it right by adding the time, and that gave the Cavs another beat with LeBron with the ball. So they did get that part of it right, but the other part of it doesn't feel right when you don't have a timeout. So it'll be interesting to see how they may try and address that.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. They'll compare rates for you so you get the best deal even if it's not with Progressive, saving you time and money. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today. So, again, the headline here is David Blatt tries as hard as he can to call a timeout he doesn't have. Again, they just called consecutive timeouts on an inbounds play when they're trying to inbound the ball on the side. James Jones had to call a timeout there before they can get the ball into J.R. Smith. J.R. Smith called a timeout falling down. they have just had this just happened in real time 1 minute earlier. So at no point in that did someone say to David Blatt, we have no timeouts left?
Oh, listen.
How does he not know they have no timeouts left?
There's no doubt about it that somebody is responsible for that to let everybody know where you are with timeouts. I actually think I saw LeBron mouth on the bench about no timeouts.
No, I think he said they have no timeouts left. The shot that we saw on the bench
was when they
him
had no
telling them that
timeouts
Chicago had no timeouts left.
Well, when you have no timeouts, absolutely someone is on the hook to say that and make sure you have all the information, when you're on the floor.
Then he calls a play.
Yeah.
And in the timeout or the stoppage they shouldn't have gotten.
When they thought there was going to be .8, this was all assuming there was .8 left. But either way, he was calling a play that didn't have LeBron involved in shooting the ball.
He calls a play that has LeBron inbounding the ball. And as you've no doubt heard by now, LeBron said, I don't think so.
To be honest, the play that was drawn up, I scratched it. And I just told Coach, just give me the ball. We either going to go in overtime or I'm going to win it for us. It was that simple.
Were you supposed to inbound on the original play?
I was supposed to take the ball out. I told Coach, there's no way I'm taking the ball out unless I could shoot it over the backboard and go in. I told him have somebody else take the ball out, give me the ball, and everybody get out the way.
Listen, you love him taking charge like that. I'm not so sure I'm in love with him, addressing all that.
But they all said it. I mean, my point is every single guy on the team, it's not just LeBron saying it.
No. I understand that completely.
So unless they had a huddle at some point and said, let's all keep this a secret.
Basically, unless they all got together and said, hey, let's not throw our coach under the bus on this one. Though, listen, this is also a sport we've heard many times where there's a lot of discussion that goes on, and especially with superstars. He was not the first or the last superstar to trump a coach's play.
He was not, but I'm not sure that we've ever seen a situation where the best player in the game wasn't even eligible to catch the ball, and if nothing else, to be a decoy. I guess, in that circumstance.
That without doubt is a fair question of why you having him inbounding the ball. I'm sure his thought was he could get it maybe where he wants it to go. He wasn't shooting well. The drought they went through in the third quarter, 7+ minutes without scoring a bucket, was incredible. LeBron shot horribly. LeBron has shot poorly in the last 2 games. So was that in consideration as well? The bottom line is, I know he made it, so hindsight's always 20/20. But I don't care. I wouldn't care how bad my superstar is shooting. I'd want him taking the last shot at the end of the game.
The Cavaliers scored 37 points in the second half of that game and won. Here's Brian Windhorst on the story of the play that David Blatt tried to call.
David Blatt was saved from infamy by his assistant coach, Tyronn Lue, in this game. After Derrick Rose hits the layup.
Okay, that's the one I'm calling the timeout.
Right.
I'll get to that one. Sorry, I hit the wrong one. This is the one on the last play.
The Cavs do get the ball down the court, end up getting a free timeout on a review. David Blatt gets the timeout he didn't have, and with 0.8 of a second left, draws up a play where LeBron James would inbound the ball and not be an option to take the game-winning shot. The players in the huddle saw this, and LeBron especially just scratched the play and said, no, you've got to give me the ball. You can't let me not even have a chance to shoot, especially with Kyrie Irving, who would be an option in this situation if he wasn't completely hobbled and unable to jump. So LeBron changes the play in the huddle. They go back out. The officials give him an extra 0.7 of a second for 1.5 seconds. LeBron makes a great move, faking to the basket, getting Jimmy Butler off balance to create space, and hits one of the great shots of his career, a buzzer beater, 26 years almost to the day after Michael Jordan did it to the Cavs.
Yeah, the ELO plays talk about. So there you have, just an unbelievable little sequence at the end. Unbelievable sequence. What do you make of the thing with the coach?
Well, I'm surprised. I'm surprised in that situation that you would have LeBron inbounding the ball. Again, I'm sure his thought was, at the time they were doing it with 0.8 seconds, that LeBron could make the pinpoint pass, because we know he is a great passer, make the pass. Now, I'm sure that was his thought process, maybe tied into the fact that he wasn't shooting well. But the other side of that is so true. You didn't have a full-strength Kyrie Irving. This series is a battle of attrition, which we'll get into as well. Irving did play over 40 minutes, but he had the bad foot, was 2 of 10 shooting.
He could barely move.
He's just not what he has been, but at least he's in a uniform and playing, unlike a Kevin Love or a Paul Gasol for Chicago at this point. As I said, we'll get more into that, but it's surprising to have the game on the line and the best player in the game, even though he's not having a great shooting game, being your inbounder instead of on the court, if not getting the ball, then at least being a decoy to take defenders away from somebody else.
Here's David Blatt on the timeout he tried to call.
Were you trying to call a timeout there?
Yeah, I almost blew it.
Yeah. So they didn't
honest
see
with
you.
you. Good thing I almost, I think we called 2 or 3 timeouts there on that sideline out, and good thing they caught it, my guys.
Hold on. I think we called 2 or 3 timeouts. That's very non-specific, okay? Well, you have a certain number of timeouts. They called 2. J.R. Smith fell to the ground and called a timeout when being double-teamed. James Jones couldn't get the ball inbounds and called another one. I know that, okay? It's not my job to know that. I'm sitting on a couch 1,000 miles away watching this. He thinks they may have called 2 or 3 on the side. Look, I don't want to make a – look, they won the game. So at the end, it doesn't matter. Chris Webber hasn't lived down 30 years later the fact that he called the timeout when he was a sophomore in college.
Right.
This is the head coach of an NBA team who did not know he didn't have a timeout left and was real non-specific in his recollection of how many they used.
Remember, they called one before that to get to that point. So they called 3, actually, right in that time frame, as Ray just pointed out to me, and he's right. But you're also – listen – he made a mistake. He flat out made a mistake. There's no question about that.
So what's the conversation if that is seen by an official? Mike Dunleavy Jr. winds up making a foul shot. The Bulls get the ball back and they win on that
game.
play.
I mean, it goes down. Listen, you mentioned about Chris Webber. I mean, this goes down as one from a coach yet. There's one, and as you go up, there's more expected of you. There's a player that could be a player on the court having that freak out moment, and doing what Chris Webber did. When you're a coach on the sideline, you're not touching the ball, you're not doing anything, you're planning everything, and you have people telling you things. He freaked out. He freaked out. He did, and he almost made one of the costliest mistakes you can make, because as we talked about, this is about the best chance that the Bulls are going to have to beat Cleveland, with Cleveland being down the way out. This is an excellent series. Who knows what this series would be if Kevin Love were completely healthy, but who knows what would happen yesterday if Paul Gasol was healthy and able to play in that game. It might be 3-1 Chicago there anyway. As I said, this is a series of attrition, with J.R. missing the first 2 games as well from the suspension. But, yes, it'll go down as a horrifically bad play, a lot of it, and then it gets more emphasized because of basically what had been going on all year long with Blatt, and questioning would he even be the head coach had they got LeBron before Blatt was named the head coach. That would you just added to the piling on that's gone on with him.
Speaking, by the way, of hideous play, that was a pretty hideous second half. And I love the NBA. I love the playoffs. I love the competitiveness of the game. But the Cavaliers scored 12 points in the third quarter. The Bulls scored 16 points in the fourth quarter. There was some just atrocious shooting in this game. And part of it, I think, is that with no Love and Kyrie Irving a shell of himself, everything is falling on LeBron. J.R. Smith won that game in the fourth quarter. J.R. Smith hit a bunch of shots in the fourth quarter when they desperately needed another direction. Where did he wind up?
Yeah, well, he had 11 of his 13 points.
13.
11 of those were in the fourth quarter.
He was phenomenal.
You're right. When they needed somebody else, because Kyrie wasn't what he was, so they needed somebody else to step up. Remember, Shumpert was out of the game, too, with the groin injury. So they were, both teams are certainly playing less than full strength. But you said, 16 in the fourth quarter for the Bulls and 12 in the third for Cleveland. Go to the second quarter. The Bulls had 17 points in the second quarter. They had their cold shooting spree in the second quarter, and the Cavs did in the third. It was tough to watch. Nothing was dropping.
And without Gasol, the Bulls' front line shot 7 of 26. Joakim Noah, who I hate to say cannot throw the ball in the ocean, was 4 of 12. How many one-footers can you miss in critical spots? Yeah. Taj Gibson, 2 of 7. Mike Dunleavy, 1 of 7. So they desperately missed Pau Gasol yesterday. It's a totally different game if he's healthy, but it's a totally different game if Irving is healthy. It's a totally different series if Love is playing.
So you play with what you got.
You got. And what you get in the end is a very exciting finish and all of that, and that's well and good. And then the continuing conversation about whether or not it is unfair for a team to get a free timeout at the end the way they did.
As I said, that's really, really going to be interesting how they want to go about it, because they actually corrected the time to what it should have been. I mean, there was no doubt about that, right? There was no doubt. So do you just live with the human error and say and make the gut call and say it's Cavs ball with 0.8 seconds left? But we're getting more and more of that, of them taking their time, because we keep saying If you're going to call the game, let's make sure we get it right. You and I both have been on that bandwagon. Okay, whether it's replays, this is the refs deciding to do it. I get it, but we have both been on the bandwagon of make sure we get it right. They got it right. They got it right, and it makes a pretty big difference, 0.8 to 1.5. I'm not saying the route to getting it right is the best route in the world, but right now I don't have a better one outside of just living with what they called on the court, the human element, as they say, which we say we both hate. If we lived with the human element, there may have been a different outcome there.
Yeah, to me, it's not worth giving a team an extra timeout to figure out if the clock was incorrect. To me, the question is, I have to assume they were looking at it to make sure possession was correct.
Well, there's two things. There's possession and then the clock.
I get that.
Right.
But if there was zero question about the possession, which the first second you saw a replay.
I agree with that.
Does the ends justify the means of giving the teams, and I guess, look, you're giving the defense a chance to huddle also.
You are.
But I think it's much more significant that you're giving the offense a chance to huddle. One way or another, that's one of the stories that comes out of it yesterday. A thrilling finish and a weekend filled with them in the NBA, and we'll get plenty of perspective this morning. Jeff Van Gundy will be live at 7:30. Mark Jackson will be in our studio a little after 9 this morning. No, he's on the phone. I'm sorry. Chauncey Billups will be in our studio at 8:30 Eastern this morning. So all of those with their Subway Fresh take